Coaches, are you tired of your players consistently asking, what do I do on this play? Or what route do I have here? Or who do I block? Something that commonly happens, and a mistake that I've had happen for myself, is that you try to get a little bit too cute. You got this 200 plus page playbook where there's too much to memorize, and players are having to learn too much, so they're actually playing slower than they are, and you're wondering why your 100-meter track star can't manage to run a go ball and take the top off of a defense. What we're going to talk about today is why tagging should replace a lot of the play calls that are in your current system. Welcome to the channel.
Ready, set, go, go!
What we're going to talk about is why tagging works really well in offensive playbooks, specifically ones that are rather pass heavy. So today I'm going to show you 3 simple concepts that you're going to be able to implement right away within your offense and in your passing game, where it's simply adding a tag. It's not something that completely replaces the entire play. It's not something where you'll have to add another play to the play sheet. It'll simply be a tag, so that it's an adjustment to a play, not necessarily a new play in itself. And mainly, this is so that you're not changing all the responsibilities for all the players on the field. You're only changing it for one position, which is a lot easier for kids to remember, as if I'm the X, I have these routes, but here are my potential tags, which allows them to play faster, get to their spots faster, and for you to have more success on the offense. All right, so let's imagine the following 3 receiver set here. Again, we use different icons in our program versus some other programs. So again, just a basic 3x1 set. The terminology for these receivers, the icons for these receivers, may not match what you're doing, but the concepts will still apply. So let's say, for example, again, a lot of things that we do on the run is based off of the inside zone. So again, we're going to be looking and giving a look of an inside zone here, where we're going to end up having an option on the back side here with our 3 receiver set. You can do a multitude of different things here, but we're just going to draw it easy enough here for what's called an inverted bubble. What that means is that the most inside receiver is going to attack the outside of the corner and then settle down almost at around the line of scrimmage. And what our hoping is that the defense runs off with the outside receiver, who's going to run a go ball. And then our wide receiver is going to look to go vertical and try to seal off the nickel player or the defender that's over top of him. So this only really gives the Sam one option, which is to flow outside of the box here to try and keep up with our slot receiver. This is something that could be a complete base play in your offense, something that you guys can run in your sleep if it's practiced enough. But what happens if the defense starts cheating towards that? On the board here, what we have is a traditional spacing concept out of a 3x1 formation. 3 receivers to the field, which is noted by our arrow, 1 receiver to the backside. Now, traditionally in offenses, what you're going to see is you're going to have the coaches tell you, hey, take the free access. And what they mean by free access is if this corner is high off and on the inside, take the quick comeback, get yourself 5 to 7 yards, live to see another down. But that might not always be there when you're running your offense. So focusing on the 3x1 formation on its own is that we're going to be running a spacing concept. So what that means is the number 1 receiver out here is going to run what's called a mini curl. So it's going to be 3 to 5 yards up, depending on your alignment, cutting in for a slant, and then sitting down on the outside leg of where that second defender is going to be. Now, the spacing route itself is going to be the Y receiver. This is the tag here. This will be called Y space, because we're running to occupy the space of the Sam linebacker, where we're going to run to his outside leg and sit down. So you have 2 different levels in which you can throw at, and you're putting this defender in a bind, because traditionally they may be responsible for that 3rd receiver who's going to run an arrow route, which typically is running basically directly to the sideline. Now, let's say, for example, teams start to cheat a little bit, and they have the nickel drop down here, and the corner play high inside, and still have the Sam line up where he's traditionally lined up, which is apexing the 3rd receiver and the offensive lineman. How can we change this with just 1 tag? And that's a great question. So what we can do here is we can still call it space, but we could call it Z space. So what's going to happen is the Z receiver here, or our number 1 receiver, is going to run the spacing route. So he's going to attack the outside leg of that Sam linebacker and sit. And now, because of this concept, the most outside receiver then runs the mini curl here, and then the most inside receiver runs the arrow. So it'll change our concept, it'll change the routes, but it's only based off of one tag. This isn't a separate play in itself. This is just us tagging the receiver. And you could run this with the W as well, or the third receiver. Very simple to change. Where, all right, we're running W space now, where we want the most inside receiver to run the space route, and we'll run the mini curl with number 2, we'll run the mini curl with number 1, and the arrow with number 2. So again, if we're W space, mini curl with the first receiver, arrow from the second receiver, and the space from the first receiver. 3 completely different passing concepts that you may have in the playbook, all changed by just one singular tag. Something where it's easy enough to remember because you have rules, not necessarily something you have to memorize. And the simple the rules are, the better. So the simple rules are here is the first receiver, the most outside receiver, my apologies, has a mini curl. The second receiver is the arrow. And then the tagged receiver runs the space. So let's say, for example, again, like using our rules that we've went through just recently, we're going to say, okay, we want to run Z space. So the Z runs the space route. Who's the most outside receiver? Exactly, it's number 2. So they're going to run the mini curl. And then the W is going to run the arrow. Do we understand that that's going to put a lot of defenders in a bind, but it's not going to make our kids play any slower, right? And this is something that you can quickly review in each of your install sessions where, all right, hey, what's our spacing rules? What's our spacing concepts look like? Now, again, don't just imagine this just out of a 3x1 set. Imagine if you were to integrate this into a different 3x1 formation, the possibilities that you could have from your playbook. Now, say, for example, that we talked about before, where that free access is being taken away now. You could simply tag this receiver where if we're going to run inside zone, right, give that inside zone look, that we're drawing up here. We're getting to the double teams. We read this end. We put the Sam in a bind, right? Where we have space on the back side of it. So you could go inside zone to the left, whatever terminology you use to call that. W space, X hitch. So that means that we're going to run the spacing concept like we talked about, the arrow, the sit route, and the mini curl. But now we're having this X receiver run a hitch. Because our free access is being taken away from that corner, he's playing and looking for the comeback because that's either what we've shown on film or what we've been successful with or what their coach is telling them to align by. It's simply, again, a tag, X hitch. The X goes, okay, I run a hitch. Very simple, very easy, and easy to execute as well as easy to remember. Right? You go through this in your wide receiver into your 1 receiver combinations or your 2 receiver combinations. So you can quickly tag a lot of your running plays with passing concepts to make them more threatening to a defense. And the beautiful thing about tagging is that it can also create more formations for you. Very, very easy to do. So say, for example, we wanted to go, let's call this trips right, okay? Or 3 receivers to the right. Now, if we wanted to go trips right slot, what would happen is our tailback would line up in the slot. Now, we don't need a formation call for this, for quads or whatever type of formation that we want to use. We don't have to add that as another page in our playbook. It's just a simple tag. Or what you could do is if you have your ace or your tailback there and you wanted to flip a specific receiver. So say, for example, your X receiver is really, really good in the slot, but you just don't have a chance to put him there. So you could go trips right, X flip. So what they'll do is they'll flip to the other side of the field with the Z receiver, and then you'll get your specific matchup that you're going to want on a receiver or on a specific corner. So that's something where, again, this isn't a new formation. It's still trips right, but you've flipped to the receivers because you want to do that based off of game plan, based off of ability, based off of the ability of the defense or your own player personally, right? It just gives you almost unlimited options when you have tags that are there to remind players what they're trying to do, especially when they're named somewhat appropriately so that they don't need to remember, oh, what does this mean again? Or, oh, what does that mean again? It's very easy. Flip means I'm flipping sides of the field, all right? Slot means I go line up in the slot. Away means I line up away from the formation. You get what I'm putting down? So if this communication style makes a ton of sense to you and it's something that you want to implement in your playbook moving forward, feel free to reach out to me. I'll gladly sit down with you and help you through that process, show you some of the examples that we've traditionally run as a program. Also, make sure to comment down below on different topics that you want to see on the channel moving forward, as I'd love to be able to provide you guys value and make sure that we're covering stuff that people want to hear about. But at the end of the day, tagging things is incredibly important within your offense because it gives you more flexibility. It's something where you can have tags that you may not necessarily show to a defense one week, but you can show them the next week, where you don't have to necessarily play your hand too much when it comes to running formations and having a stagnant offense. It allows you to be more fluid and have more opportunities for success come the fall. So with those tags, instead of stressing out the entire offense by having to learn new formations or new concepts, you're only asking one or two players to change and adapt based off of the play and what you're asking them to call. Now, if that makes a ton of sense, also make sure to check out the description down below, as the Coaches Lounge is a private Facebook group of coaches that are looking to improve and grow, as well as like the video and subscribe to the channel for more great football content. Thank you so much for checking out my YouTube video today. I really do appreciate it. If there is any criticisms or anything you may have, put them in the comments. I love reading them and I want to respond to all of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day. Bye for now.